To another episode of Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Dave Peltz, and I have with me my partner, Dr. Joe Hamlett. How are you doing, Joe?
Hey, I'm doing great, Dave. It's a nice day outside today, sun shining. It's a football game today, so excited about that. Actually, two games, but really only one matters to me at this point. So, yeah, it's a good day, very good day.
Excellent, excellent. So today we're going to talk about critical self-reflection and the importance of it and what you can do with it. Um, I know throughout my career, I've learned to reflect a little bit more about what I've done, where I've been, how I've done it, the things that worked well, and the things that haven't worked well. How about you, Joe?
Yeah, so for me, I think I've done way more critical reflection than I really ever realized. For me, though, the real critical reflection happened in 2005, of course, when I went back to school. But I didn't realize that I had been doing this, my entire career. But that's the time that it really stood out for me. So, critical reflection is key if you want to progress, if you want to develop, if you want to grow, because you have to always be evaluating where you are today and where you'd like to go tomorrow or down the road. So, critical reflection, you have to do it if you want to move forward.
You brought up a great point, Joe. You said to understand where you're at now and where you want to be, and that's important because, especially with the pandemic, it's that seems to be a common thread over the last couple of years, and I'm assuming it's going to be for a little while longer. Um, but when we start talking about where we're at now, where we want to be, you know, where we want to be may be different from where other people want to be, and that where we want to be can be, maybe we want to move up into a company, maybe we want to go into a company, maybe we want to lateral and broaden our knowledge base within a company or industry. Maybe we want to retire, maybe we want to just get away from that rat race and start our own business. Maybe we just want to, stop what we're doing, decompress, and focus on our family or a hobby or some other facet of our career, or maybe education, or combine those things, understand better how to balance work and life and school, or how do we integrate those things together or separate them. So you bring up a lot of, those 2 points of where we are now, where we want to be, are really important, because unless we understand where we're at now and understand where we want to be, it's hard to kind of, or it's challenging to reverse engineer, once we know where we want to be, reverse engineer what those milestones and inch stones and, layover points and goals and mini goals are to get to point B from point A.
So, Dave, really just think about this though, and you said it. I think you said, in the last couple of years, it's changed, but because of the pandemic. I mean, even if you had prior to, COVID, even if you had an idea of where you were at that time and then where you were trying to go, think about how that's changed though. The dynamics of, everything has changed. The how we communicate. I mean, me and you here virtually, and a lot of organizations have changed to that. So if you had not been up to speed, or had not done any critical thinking prior to that, are you prepared now, with the pandemic and all the things that have changed? Are you prepared now to do that? I mean, you kind of said reverse engineering. If you have an idea where you want to go, then you can reverse engineer it back and kind of figure out where you need to start. But if you never have done that, and now you're faced with, okay, now I lost my job, or things have changed in my job, you really now don't have, if you have not done that critical thinking or reflection, you're probably lost, because you
It's a
have
good
not
point.
done that prior to it. And now, again, now all these other variables are thrown at you. Now you are really in a, predicament, because now you got to figure out, you even if you had a plan where you're going to go, now it's all changed.
Mhm.
Like you said, do I want to stay with this company? Do I want to move over? But now that's changed again because of the dynamics of this, the impact of this, pandemic on everything. So now, if you're not, doing any critical reflection, and then where do you go? I mean, you're basically living day to day without any direction. And so I've heard that so many times from people that, you say, hey, what do you want to do in the future? Where you're going to be here in a year? And they can't really tell you because they haven't thought about it. And so that's why I just think of those people that have not done any of that or prepared themselves. And then, the pandemic hits, what do they do? And I think initially there was a lot of panic, a lot of, uncertainty. People didn't know where to go, what to do. So I just wanted to interject that. I didn't want to disrupt your
No,
thought
that's a
process
great
or
point.
anything.
And it made me, reflect for a moment and think about what you just said. And for those of us that are watching or listening in, maybe they're not quite sure what we mean by critical reflection or critical self-reflection. What does that involve? We can talk about, the need for it, but what is that really? And, for me, that's really just kind of taking a step back from myself and thinking of the situation as, if I was a friend of Dave's, what would I be telling him or talking to him about? And pulling those threads and asking those hard questions of a friend. Hey, what are you thinking? Where's your head at right now? What do you want to do when you grow up again?
Right.
Or now? And are you prepared for those things? And since you and I are very involved in career positioning, professional development, and personal development, what does critical self-reflection look like? And that can be saying, well, if I've lost my job, or I want to get into a school, or go into a different position, or move up, over, out. I mean, I guess you don't have to create a resume for if you retire, but how current is my resume? How are my interviewing skills? Do I know what my skills are? Because it's common to get into a job or in a place in life, if maybe you're a stay-at-home mom or dad, and what's that next step? What are my skills really? And that's a very challenging thing to think about, is what do I do on a daily basis? Because it becomes rote. We just start doing things, living in the moment, and just it becomes repetitive. It's like, you
Right.
get in that machine mode, and you punch the clock, you check in, you check out, you punch the clock in, check in, check out type thing. But what does that actually mean to say, hey, this is my job, I'm in XYZ position, what does that entail? And does that align with what I really want to be doing as a person and a professional? And they may or may not align. And for Joe and I, we've both been in the military, and we've both been in corporate America, we've both been in the defense industry, we both have our doctorate degrees. And it's like, but what do we want to do with these things? And we've talked a lot over the last several years, how can we manifest what we love doing into something that we want to be doing on a daily basis? And that's where that critical self-reflection comes in. And I don't mean to brag, but I guess I kind of watch a lot of TV. you know, you know, and it's, I say that because when we watch these shows about people, like there was a glass blowing show that I just watched a few episodes of, and it's like, these people are passionate about it, and maybe they're not into that career field, and some of them haven't been, it's just a hobby, but they talk about, how can I turn glass blowing into something profitable? Some of them are teachers, some of them are work in the restaurant industry, some of them are you know mechanics. And it's like, you hear what their normal day-to-day job is, but then you see what they're doing as a hobby, and it just blew my mind, no pun intended, about how they're so passionate about something. And that reminded me of what Joe and I do. We're very passionate about coaching other people. And what did I do to get to there? I just sat down and thought about, what do I really enjoy doing? Not whether it's a work or hobby, it's just, what do I really love doing? And I love helping other people. I love providing them lessons and information and knowledge, so they don't have to take that long scenic route that Joe and I refer to oftentimes. It's what do I really love doing? And then how can I make that something I can do on a daily basis? Cooking shows the same way. We watch shows about, people doing cooking, and it's like, wow, they're doing amazing things. They must be a chef. No, they're not a mechanic. They're an attorney. They're a physician. They work admin support. They do parks and rec, whatever, but they do all these really great things. And I guess the question comes down to, for me, is, do I want to keep that a hobby, or do I want to turn that into something more? And some people want it to be a hobby because it's their place of personal escape, where they can clear their head and just be at peace and really think about things. And that's their zen, or their form of meditation, if you will. So when we talk about critical self-reflection and critical reflection, it's really understanding who you are as a person, what inspires you, what motivates you, and what drives you to be a better person. So I've been talking for quite a bit. So Joe, what are your thoughts on
So
that?
I want to touch on, so you mentioned, people trying to figure out what they enjoy doing, what what they would do even if they weren't paid, type thing. And oftentimes the people I've talked to, they've really kind of forgotten that they get into the grind of work, going to work every day, the 9 to 5, and living life. And I think you mentioned earlier, just living day to day. A lot of us do that, and I'll admit I did that for a lot of years too. But it wasn't until I started doing that critical reflection, self reflection for myself, that I realized, okay, yeah, I'm contributing to society, raising a family, but is that it for me? Is there something else I'd prefer to do or like to do? And when I reached the retirement age, or age when the twilight years, and thinking, I don't know how much time left on this earth. Did I fulfill my goals? Did I do the things I should have done? And for me, that's when it hit me, when that critical uh, reflection made sense, because I didn't want to just walk away saying, yeah, I did my job, I raised my family, I did all the things I was supposed to. But is that all? Again, what about those things you enjoy doing? What about those things that you put here to do, versus the things that other people want you to do? So for me, that was the self-reflection piece. And again, a lot of people I talk to, they've kind of forgotten that. They've kind of forgotten their dreams. And like you say, these other people are, maybe have a full-time job, lawyers and things like that, but then in their pastime, or they do these other things. So you're right. My passion, again, like Dave said, is helping people. It is helping people not have to take the long scenic route, and help them achieve their goals, and reach their full potential. And so for me, that's where I want to end up eventually, is helping others realize their dreams and goals. And so, like you said, it wasn't until I had that, um, critical self-reflection, and realized that was my passion, that I wanted to help people. And but again, I was doing my job every day, taking care of my family, and that was it. And I felt like something was missing. So for me, that's what started this whole journey, was that critical self-reflection. And like I say, I joke about it. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. And so some people take that as, you're never going to be satisfied. And I don't think that's the case. I just want to remain open to the possibilities of, what's next. Because again, if I just get into this grind, the same groove or rhythm, of doing the same thing over and over again, I'm really limiting myself. I'm really not thinking beyond, what's directly in front of me. And that's one of my sayings is, I want to help people see what's not directly in front of them. I want
Mhm.
people to open their mind to the possibilities of, way out there, what
Mhm.
they think they can be or do or achieve. Because again, me, I didn't know I was going to be any of these things I am today. Initially it was because I had that closed mindset. I was not
Mm.
open to those possibilities. And now today, that's why I still say I don't know what I'm going to do yet, because I'm still open to the possibilities of what's next. What's next for Dr. Joe Hamlet or the average Joe Hamlet? That's what I really remain excited about, is the fact that there are still so many things I can do and achieve. And so that's what, in my experience, that critical self-reflection does for you, is that it helps you, create a path or start to see things that you had not thought about or seen before. Just again, figuring out I'm here today, but where do I really want to go? It really just makes you think about not just the now, but the tomorrows, or what if things happen that I haven't planned for? How do I overcome those type of things? And so that constant critical self-reflection is very important. Um, so that's what I got.
Yeah, yeah. And you brought up some more good points, Joe. It made me start thinking, what about those folks who are happy with what they're doing? Some people are perfectly happy coming to work, doing their 9 to 5, coming home, and just they have a very clear line between work and home. And work is work. They don't want to do any more, any less. They want to do a good job, great job, and just get it done so they can come home and spend time with their family or do their hobbies. And that's fine too. But again, it's that level of self-awareness that we're really trying to hit
Right. Yep.
upon
Yep.
for folks to be just more consciously engaged and consciously aware of where they're at and what they're doing, and and understanding that environment. Um, for some
And Dave,
folks,
I,
yeah,
I I don't mean to cut you off, but you're right, and I didn't. Kind of the path I was going down is that we all should be looking at moving on, and you made that is a very valid point. And me and my son had this conversation last week that they may be happy at their job, and they may be not concerned with moving on or over. And the key point to that you said was the self-awareness piece, but that still comes with that critical self-reflection. So if
absolutely.
you're happy where you are, excited about where you are, that is fully acceptable. That absolutely is. And I didn't want to discount that. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because that is still part of that critical self-reflection, that you're okay with where you are. And so yeah, I didn't want to discount anybody, that loves what they're doing or
Mhm.
enjoying that space they're in. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure I followed that up, because I didn't mean to discount that
Yeah, and
other
that's
side
very
of that.
valid. That's very valid, and I'm sure our listeners and viewers appreciate that. Um, so when we talk about that self-awareness and being content with where you are, then there's the other piece of that, what about those folks that are just finishing up school? It's their first job or maybe first handful of jobs. They get in, and it doesn't mean that you're younger. You can be, in your 30s, 40s, 50s,
Right.
60s nowadays, with that position. Some people are content being there, and some people want to move up, or some people want to broaden their knowledge. And that self-awareness of saying, hey, I want more or I want different is part of that critical reflection. And then to extend that a little bit, it's, well, then what do you need to do? What do you need to do to get there? Well, that gets back to what we first started talking about. You have to have at least an idea of where you want to go or where you want to be. Do you want to be a manager? Do you want to be an expert individual contributor? Do you want to be the best sous chef without owning your own restaurant? Or do you want to be that head chef that has a restaurant? Do you want to, rent, or do you want to own a house? And there's pros and cons to both of those. I mean, there are definitely benefits. I've talked to people who are in senior leadership positions that are like, no, I rent because I want to be mobile and movable and
Right. Yep.
flexible. And I've talked to people who are like, no, I want a house. I want that grounding. I want to know that this is my safety zone, my safe place. I can go there, and if I want to paint the walls pink with brown polka dots, I can do it. So there are definitely, arguments or views from both sides. The point that Joe and I want to make is to be to make a deliberate effort to be consciously self-aware of where you're at, and to make that determination, that honest, difficult conversation with yourself. Is this where I want to be? And if the answer is yes, I'm perfectly happy with where I'm at, then you're good.
Right. Yep.
Maybe, but there again, then there's the other side. Is there something more that I want? It could be, well, I want grandchildren. Well, what have you done to prepare for that? Right? Have you what have you done to position yourself as a grandparent? I mean, we can flip this from professional to personal. It could be education. It could be, hey, I want to learn how to weld, or I want to learn how
Well,
to work on
but
cars.
but Dave, that is all part of this. I mean, it is.
Absolutely.
You can't separate personal and professional because they're going to affect one or the other.
Yeah.
So I think it is
And to
important
offer a
that.
little clarification, it was just that there's multiple spectrums of self-reflection, not just
Right, right,
professional. We can
right.
talk about
Yep,
personal on the
yep.
personal side, and that it does apply to the personal environment, not just the professional environment. So maybe you want to buy a house, maybe you want to buy a car, or another car, or a car for your kids, or I don't know, do volunteer work. How do you position yourself to do those things? And part of that is the critical self-reflection. Are you willing to do what it takes to get those material items, or to volunteer or be engaged in those other activities?
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. Yeah, so again, critical self-reflection, like I said, over the years, I've probably done it more than I realized I was doing it. But for me, the intentional side of it didn't really rear itself until, like I said, 2005, when I went down this journey. Like I say, we've all been on our journeys, but it for me, I still call it that intentional journey because that's when I
Yeah,
really took
that
stock.
that's
Really looked at where I was and where I wanted to go. And I think, again, I'd been doing it, but this time it was, really looking at it. And then you said it, taking that honest look at myself in the mirror and then accepting, those things that I needed to do if I wanted to, get to those levels that I'd set for myself. So and Dave said it, it's both personal and professional. Yeah, it's still all about, if you have a goal or if you want to get to a certain place or level, you have to understand what it's going to take to get there. So it takes, really taking that honest look at yourself, and sometimes, hearing or seeing things that you, um, didn't realize was happening, or the things that you may have to stop, or things you may have to do to get you there. But so if you go down this journey of, critical self-reflection, you're probably going to be opening your eyes to things that you may not have considered, or things that you didn't want to consider, or things you didn't want to see, or you push behind you. So that's the piece of it that is going to maybe sometimes slap you in the face, that you need to do things differently. So,
yeah.
not to caution anyone, but at the same time to prepare them that, you might see things, or, remember things that you had tried to push aside or push behind you, or block out totally. So yeah, self-reflection, it could be a, eye opener in some
Mhm.
cases, and sometimes not in a good way. So just, as we
You really have to be honest with yourself too.
yeah, I mean, as
And
we
that's
talk
that's
about
that's the
this.
challenging piece, because a lot of folks, we people think about what they're doing, but they don't make a deliberate, conscious effort to critically reflect. And I
Right.
think that's maybe a distinction we can make, and an informal distinction. Thinking is something that we tend to do throughout the day, and just something that happens, versus saying, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to really take a few moments, or several minutes, or hours, to really think about and write down where I'm at and where I want to versus where I want to be. And if they line up, then that's great. You're self-aware. If they don't line up, that's great. Then you're self-aware, because you've gone through the exercise of consciously thinking about and analyzing who you are, where you're at, and what you want to be doing at that moment and going forward.
Yeah, I agree. Um, so I mean, we've talked a lot about, critical self-reflection and what it can do for you. So I want to leave you with this again. At some time in your life, in your career, you really need to have that conversation with yourself. You really do. And again, like Dave said, if you're fine with where you are, self-awareness that's great. Or if you're not fine with where you are, you still are self-aware, and you have a decision or a choice to make whether you make changes or whether you stay the same. So, but again, anything you do should be based on your own um, desires, your own needs. And so being self-aware, understanding where you are today, where you like to go, that's going to help you with those decisions. So that's where I'll end it, because we could go on, for hours about this topic. As like Dave said at the beginning, we have talked about this many hours in the past. So, but we just wanted to give you all kind of a high level introduction into critical self reflection. So I'll hand it off to Dave to see if he had any closing remarks or closing comments.
I think that's a good way to wrap it up, Joe. I have nothing further to add at this point, so I'll go ahead and take us out if you're good with that.
I'm good
Uh,
with that.
Thanks for tuning in to Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. Until next time, keep on being your not so ordinary you.